Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. It is your girl, Marcy Thomas, back with you again for another episode of the BGC Book Club. So come on in the room, as we love to say here, and let's get ready for a great conversation with one of our favorite authors. I know she's one of mine. I'm sure she's one of yours too. And if not, she will be. So I'm coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Cleveland, Ohio, and a whole bunch of other places in between. So if you want to shout out where you're joining us from, if it's your first time, whatever the case may be, we just like to know who all is here for these great, wonderful conversations. And if you're new here, just to let you know, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to share them and we'll get to them when we can. But if you've read the book, we don't want any spoilers. I'll tell you that up front. No spoilers, no questions that will give us spoilers. So without any further delay, I want to introduce to you Connie Briscoe, who has been a full-time published author since 1994. Over that time, she has written a dozen books, including her most recent, Chloe, which we're going to get into tonight. Look at that beautiful cover. Chloe, which is a novel of secrets and lies. Now, her work has been published globally, appearing on the bestseller list of the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and the Baltimore Sun, among many other publications. She was born with a mild hearing impairment, but never let that hold her back. Basically, over several years of hearing loss, she went ahead and got a cochlear implant, which has restored much of her hearing rather. But of course, she believes that the challenge of dealing with a hearing loss helped make her stronger, more resilient, and more determined to reach her goals. Now, when she's not writing in her spare time, Connie enjoys reading, crafting jewelry, and traveling. Without any further delay, let's welcome Connie Briscoe to the BGC Book Club. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
And I apologize, y'all. I was a little tongue-tied. Connie knows I had to get a throat lozenge because for some reason I was losing my voice. So I wanted to make sure I could come to you properly. So I apologize.
No problem. Not a problem.
Something
It
over
happens
some
to all of
words.
us.
Yes, it
Yeah.
happens to all of us. So thank you for being here again.
Oh,
You
no
have
problem.
been here 3 times. This is your 3rd time, and I'm really excited to have yet another opportunity to talk to you, Connie.
I'm excited too. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. So, Chloe, this is a wonderful book. I've already told you that I really enjoyed reading this book. It's different from other things that you've written, and I really can't wait
Yes.
to just hear a lot about your inspiration and all of those things that had you to write such a compelling story.
Let's back up a little bit. I decided with my previous novel, You Never Know, when I wrote that, I had been absent from the publishing scene for about 10 years. I took a long, much needed break. Before that, my novels were mainly focused on, I would say, women's fiction, relationship novels, about the relationships of women and the men in their lives. And when I decided to come back after a 10-year break, I wanted to try suspense and thrillers because I'd always enjoyed reading them. I just decided not to write them when I first started writing because I thought they would be more challenging to write than women's fiction. So first I wrote You Never Know, and that was a challenge because it was a new novel. And then after that, I felt more comfortable. And I was looking around for my second project after You Never Know. And I had watched a film called Rebecca, which was based on a novel by Everette Du Maurier. She wrote it years ago, something like the 1940s. I don't think I ever read that novel. If I did, it was a long time ago. What I did do is I saw a film based on that novel. Hitchcock also did a film that was widely received. I think I saw that too, again, many years ago. But most recently, I saw the film Rebecca on HBO. And I remember thinking as I watched it that a lot of the themes and a lot of the moral dilemmas that the characters deal with could apply very well to the Black community. And so I decided to take that on and to use Rebecca as sort of an inspiration to tell a different story. about some of the same themes in the Black community.
Yes, and I really do love that. We talked about this a little bit before you came on online, how we've seen books that are like adaptations or it could be inspired by and things like that. So I think it's real important for you to say that it's inspired by because
Yeah,
it's
it was inspired by that. Naturally, it's very different
yes.
because I'm using Black characters and Black themes, and even though the general themes are the same, the way they apply in the Black community is certainly going to be very different.
So yes, so those of you all who are familiar with Rebecca, don't come into it expecting it to be just like Rebecca because it's not.
It's very different from Rebecca.
It's very different. And for me, I have not seen Rebecca. So as I told you, I'm
Okay.
going to like compare that to you just because I haven't seen that. So,
Okay.
but I love the story. I love the way that the story is told. And for me, in reading it, it really felt like two different stories in one. Now, it is broken down into two different parts, but what's happening in the first part is leading into the things we see
Yeah.
in the second half of the book. But it's like the first part kind of gets you invested into the characters and see some of the things that they're dealing with. And then in the second part, that's where we really start to see the secrets and lies. Because it is called a novel of secrets and lies. So
Yes,
we're really
yes.
see that.
I think of the first part of the book. They actually take place, the first and second parts, in different locations.
Right.
And the first part of the book, I chose the setting of Martha's Vineyard because what I was trying to do was trying to bring these two very different characters together. One is Angel, a private chef who works for a wealthy, prominent family on the island. She's professional and successful, but she's a chef. And I was trying to bring her together with Everette Bruce, who is a Black billionaire. And I chose Martha's Vineyard because this is an island where you have people from all walks of life who manage to mingle and enjoy each other's company and to leave the problems and the challenges and the differences um, back home. So Martha's Vineyard, I thought, would be the perfect setting for that because it would be the kind of romantic setting where two people like Everett and Angel could step away from their everyday problems, their everyday lives, and come to this romantic island and just sort of let it go and get into a relationship. It's difficult enough to try to bring two people from such different lifestyles together. So the setting was very important. I think it contributed to allowing that to happen. Each of them could sort of step outside of themselves and sort of let themselves go on the island and put those differences aside.
Right. And I really love seeing that because I have never been to the island.
Oh, okay.
I've never
You
been.
need to go.
Yeah, I want to go. I know they actually have a book festival there. So if anybody who's doing that and they need somebody to come moderate, I'll let you girl.
Yes, especially Oak Bluffs.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a magical place, really. It really is.
Yes. And as I was telling you before we came on, another inspired by was Forever, which is on Netflix right now. And
Hmm.
one of the
In
episodes of
time.
Forever, this Black family goes to Martha's Vineyard. So it's just timely to see this and really see what that looks like. So, of course, when we meet Angel, as you've already stated, she's gone there. She's there to work. She's not there just
Yes.
as, somebody to visit. This family has brought her in. She is a sous chef slash chef, personal chef who goes there to work for them and help them throughout, the month of August, which I guess is a time when a lot of people are really at Martha's Vineyard. And so she's just there to work. She's not there. She's not looking, for a man or anything like that. But it was
But
just
she enjoys it because it allows her to get away to a beautiful island and have a vacation that she doesn't have to pay for.
right.
And yes, so she cherishes it. She loves her work. She loves the time that she has there, but she has a very difficult boss that she has to put up with, and
Mm-hmm.
she puts up with the boss because it allows her to spend time on the island without
Mm-hmm.
having to pay. Martha's Vineyard is very expensive to stay there. She would not be able to afford it if it were not for this job. So that's why she puts up with a little flack and some difficulties from her employer.
Oh
Jillian.
yeah. Oh yeah. I did not like her employer. Jillian Harrison is her name. She was a piece of work. But,
Mhm.
in that, we're seeing, the differences between someone like, an angel who's going there. It is an opportunity for her. She's getting to be in this beautiful place, and you'll have a little time off here and there to see what's going on. She's able to dive into that thing that she loves, which is cooking. But, seeing Jillian, who is her boss, and just her attitudes and her mindset, it kind of shows you, yes, they're both black, but there's also this thing of class that we're dealing
Yes, exactly. And Jillian will not let you forget it. There are some people
with.
who will not let you forget what class she thinks you belong to. And she is particularly bothered when Angel seems to want to step out of what she perceives should be the boundaries to someone of her status. And so when she meets, and I guess we'll talk about it, but when she meets Everett and begins to start seeing this black billionaire who Jillian had hoped to match up with her daughter Norma, but he's more interested in Angel. That throws Jillian for a loop because she just thinks it's totally wrong, and Angel is way out of her class dealing with someone like Everett. But Everett, on the other hand, I think the reason he's attracted to Angel is because she's authentic, she's down to earth. He's trying to get away from a failed marriage with a woman who was the exact opposite, pretty
Right.
much, of Angel. So it's kind of a relief and escape for him, too.
Hmm. And it's good to see that, because a lot of times we think that there are things that would draw people together or make people want to be together, but it shows it doesn't matter. And there's a line later in the book where she talks about, hey, you could be with that man who has it all just the same as you can be with somebody who doesn't. At the end of the day, it's about the relationship and how you relate to that other person.
You can fall in love with a rich man as quickly as you can with a poor
Exactly.
man.
Exactly. Now the
You
rich man
never know.
might be more fun, but in
Or
some
maybe
ways,
not quite.
in some ways, in some way.
But it happens. It
But
happens.
it happens. It
Yeah.
happens. But it's just interesting to see that, and to also see how, as you already said, Jillian really wanted to set this billionaire. He's a widower. She wants to set him up with her daughter, but he doesn't want her daughter, and
Her
so
daughter's not even interested in him, but
he's not
she has
interested. Yeah,
this
she's not interested
dream,
at
this
all.
vision that he's perfect for her daughter, who she wants to marry off, marry well. But he's not looking for that. He's attracted to Angel because she's down to earth, she's authentic. She's nothing like his previous wife, Chloe,
Mm,
who is her. She is based. The title is based on her,
mm-hmm,
Chloe, even though she's deceived. She's Everett's first wife, and they had a pretty rocky marriage. And so by the time he gets to the island, his wife is deceased, and he's looking for an escape. He
mm-hmm,
wants something, I guess, totally unlike his previous wife, and along comes Angel, who he's attracted to simply because she's just totally different from his wife, and
mm-hmm,
lets him escape that trauma and the difficulties that he left behind. He lives in Potomac, Maryland. His estate is in Potomac, Maryland, and he's getting away from that. So that's why he's attracted to Angel.
mm-hmm. Yes, and it's just good to see, because initially she doesn't even really know who he is. So she's not going into it for the money either. So they're both falling, getting to know one another, and, ultimately falling for one another just based upon the relationship that they have. And I just think that Martha's Vineyard as the backdrop is wonderful, because they're getting to explore all of these things that are there. As you mentioned, Oak Bluffs, but there are all these other areas that they get out and explore and go to the beach,
Hmm.
things like that. He's introducing her to things she may not be as familiar with.
And
And
she's introducing him to
mm,
different things on the island. I think it's Martha's Vineyard is the perfect place if you're in the right mindset. It's the perfect place to fall in love, and especially for people from different socioeconomic classes, because you kind of just want to push that aside and enjoy the beauty and the tranquility of the island, which is what they managed to do. Now, once they leave, they have to come back to real life, but this
Right.
allows them that initial bond to form, that chance for two people from very different walks of life to put those lives aside and to fall in love.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the island because for me, it is a character in the story as well. Just
Okay.
because it's an introduction that some people, like myself and others may not be aware of, but just,
Hmm.
you know, real briefly, kind of how did Martha's Vineyard come to be a place for Black people, specifically Oak Bluffs? What is kind of the history that has
You know,
drawn?
I know a little of the history, and I believe it started with Martha's Vineyard was a vacation place for wealthy whites, and
Mm-hmm.
they brought their servants out of, I think it was past slavery by that time, but they brought their servants to work on the islands, which were Black people. And the Black people eventually, I'm not sure the particulars, they eventually bought their own property, their own homes. And in some areas of Oak Bluffs, some areas of Martha's Vineyard, particularly Oak Bluffs, are pretty much predominantly, I wouldn't say predominantly Black, but there are areas that are predominantly Black. And Black people own these beautiful what they call gingerbread homes that have been in their families for generations, because once they bought the properties back when they were coming with their bosses to work in their bosses' kitchens in their homes, they started buying their own homes.
Mm-hmm.
And this was decades ago, and the homes are so nice that they've kept them in their families. Some of them are some really nice homes, others are smaller, but that's pretty much how we got our start there. And that's why when you go to Oak Bluffs, you see all these Black families that have been coming to the island for decades, and they don't sell their homes, they pass them on to the next generation. It's that important, it's that special.
Yes, and the Obamas, you may have seen pictures of the Obamas there, so a
Yeah,
lot,
they're actually from Chicago, but yeah,
right?
you fall in love with the island. They probably went a couple of times and they fell in love with it, which is why they ended up owning property there. I don't know if they still have it, but I do know they bought property. I think they were in the Chilmark area, which is a
Okay.
little more private, exclusive,
Oh,
which
yeah, of course.
they couldn't be in Oak Bluffs.
Yeah, they can't be hanging out with the regular people, the
Although
regular
he would
Christians.
come to at times, I've been going there for about the past 15 years,
Okay.
almost every summer. And he and his wife would come and to a restaurant um, on the main street, maybe once every summer, and the crowds would descend on the restaurant,
Right.
wanted to get a glimpse of him coming out. But no, he didn't stay on the island. But we have a lot of popular restaurants in Oak Bluffs, and so he would visit some of those.
That's pretty neat. And one last thing about the island. If any of you have TV One, which is on cable, there is a show called Savor the City. It comes on Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock p.m., but you may want to go
Mhm.
back and look at the episode that they actually went to Martha's Vineyard. So they did talk a little bit more about that
Okay.
history and some of the restaurants and things like that. So, so I guess there is somebody that's trying to tell me because it keeps coming up. And like one of our
It's
commenters said,
very hard to get a house there because it is so popular.
yeah, it needs to be a field trip. So yeah, I need to figure out, whether it's the
Mhm.
film festival or the book festival and go over there and hang out. So thank you for sharing that. But as we are watching this couple, Angel and Everett, they're in this world of being on the vineyard for several weeks while she's working and he's there on a vacation, and they're able to like live and do these things, and actually they're sneaking around because of the
Because of Jillian, yes.
circumstance.
Because of Jillian, yeah.
Because of
Jillian is totally against her getting to know Everett. She thinks that Angel is completely out of her class or out of her status or where she should be. And, Angel at that time is somewhat intimidated by Jillian because she doesn't want to lose her job. She doesn't want to lose her opportunity to come to the island every summer and stay for the month of August, which she does. And so she keeps it a secret. She's going to see Everett. She's not going to give that up, but she keeps it a secret. She hides it from Jillian initially because she's afraid of losing her job.
right, right. But as smaller communities go, it doesn't stay a secret for long.
No.
Oh man, but just seeing that and just navigating what that would be like. Because I mean, let's face it, there sometimes can be a little excitement about doing something that you think that people don't know what you're doing. There's a
Yeah,
level of
exactly.
excitement in that.
Um, like you said, it does eventually come out on an island as small as that, and Jillian being as popular and prominent as she is, the word is going to get back to her. But by this time, the long and short of it is about when she starts being suspicious about Angel and Everett. I think Angel even admits it to her at some
Mm,
point that she's seeing him and she's not going to stop. But shortly thereafter, he proposes to her.
right.
So that kind of solves that problem of her. Well, before that, though, he actually, because after they're in the month of August, which is a very popular month on the island.
Hmm.
After the month of August, normally Angel would go back home to Washington D.C., where she lives, to her job there as a sous chef at a very popular restaurant. Everett would go back to his business dealings, and he has a business trip to Europe. Well, because of the strong connection that he and Angel formed during the trip, the visit to Martha's Vineyard, he asked her to come to the island, to Europe with him when he goes. And at first, she's kind of insulted. She kind of miffed because he thinks, she's supposed to just drop everything and run off to
Right.
Europe with him. He can do that, but she can't. She has a job, bills, obligations. And so they get into a bit of a spat because she's upset that he assumes that she can just take off at any
Mm,
time. He doesn't, that he doesn't understand her life and her obligations and the things that she has to do that he doesn't. So they kind of thought apart after he invites her to come to Europe with him, and she says, "No, I can't do that."
right.
So a little time goes by, and eventually he decides, well, if she can't go, if she's worried about her status and the risk involved in leaving her place of employment, maybe she'll come if she's my wife. So he proposes to her, and that does lift the burden from Angel. She does there's a lot less risk if she travels to Europe as his fiance and future wife to be. So they get engaged at that point.
Yes, and I found that interesting because a lot of people, in Angel's position, if you meet this billionaire, millionaire, whatever, it's like, oh, I got it made, because this man, wants to
But
be with me.
would you run off with him without the promise of marriage?
Some women would now.
Some
Some
women would. Yeah, a lot of women would.
would.
But then I think that wait, and then you did what you just hope things work out. But eventually, this billionaire you would think is going to move on, and then you've
Right,
lost your job, you've lost your apartment.
right,
So it's a lot to think about.
right,
Fortunately, she didn't have to, but yeah, that's I didn't think her reaction to saying no, I can't go, even though she was kind of thinking about possibly going, but
right.
telling him no, I can't go. I didn't think that was too far fetched because she had
Oh
a
no,
lot to lose. Yeah, she had a
oh
lot to
no.
lose.
And actually, I like the way that you wrote. I like that you wrote it that way because it's
Mhm.
just the reality that just because she met this man and he's this billionaire and they're having this great time, it's she's really thinking about her own self and how she's going to be able to take care of her life because it's not a guarantee that
No.
without a marriage. I mean, hey, let's face it, even with a marriage or a ring, it's not a guarantee, but she's thinking about, hey, this could just be a fling for him. This could just be, because it is kind of a whirlwind type of thing that's happening.
Yeah, she hasn't known him that long. She's known him less
It's
than a
like,
month at that point, maybe going on 4 weeks.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, it's a very risky proposition for her. As much as she probably wants to go, um, she does say no.
mm-hmm. She does say no until she says yes.
Well, now, after he proposes, yes, she says
Right,
yes.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. But then, of course, once at this point, we watch them. She goes on this trip, and all these other things happen. Now she's a fiance, and not just a summer fling, so to speak. but we also get to really start to dive into the relationship that they have with one another, and how he works and just things like that. Because it's one thing to be off on this island. When they're on the island, she's the one that's working and got to go and, tend to crazy Miss Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, and all that.
Yeah.
She has certain obligations, but when she's on his turf, so to speak, he has obligations. And so at that point, we get to see them, how they're connecting or maybe not connecting, because now he's off in his world.
Yeah, he's off in his world, his business world. He's traveling on business. So she begins to realize that this Everett is very different from the Everett who was on the island, because he doesn't have the time to be as attentive. She spends a lot of days, often the entire day, alone, having to entertain herself. And so this is sort of the break between the island, where everything was peachy keen, everything was romantic, to what happens when they get to Potomac, his estate in Maryland. And in between that, you see him starting to maybe slip away a little bit. At least the Everett who paid her all that attention, gave her all that time and attention on those bluffs, he's starting to change. Not so much that she's ready to give up, but she is noticing a difference, that he's not the sweet, attentive person he was on the island, that that this is a different Everett, a different side of Everett that she's beginning to see. I think she has not doubts, but she's starting to worry at that point that it may not be the fairy tale romance that she envisioned when she was on the island, which I think is probably it's life. It's,
That's life. Right. I mean, he didn't get to be a billionaire by just hanging out on the island.
No, he didn't.
So, some of that is, yes, he's going to have to work, and he's going to have to do certain things in order for him to be able to, have this. In order for them to have the lifestyle to do these things, he does have to work and all of that. And of
She's
course,
going to have to learn to shop and take her tea and crumpets alone until she gets off work or whatever.
Exactly. Which is, there are spaces where things are said about her similarity to Chloe, who is the wife, Everett's first wife. But Chloe came from that world of the tea and the crumpets and doing all of these sorts of things. So she probably didn't care that her husband was off doing these other things.
No.
Chloe kind of had her own life, and she was a person who came from a certain level of privilege and things like that. So being married to a man like Everett just helped her to continue to do what she always wanted to do. Where when you're getting like the regular kind of girl who Angel is, she's, now she's in this space where I'm not working, and I'm not doing my thing. And so a lot of her life,
I think she initially understands that Everett can't always, just because he's a billionaire, he can't always hang out with her the way he did on the island. But like, as you said, Chloe would have understood that, because she comes from that world. Even though her family, they're not billionaires, they're very prominent, very well-to-do family in Washington, D.C. She had a father who worked hard and was away a lot, so she understood it. In fact, when they get together, Chloe and Everett get together, it's almost like a contract, because, he's bringing all the money, the billions, but because he's a family from Virginia and he had to raise up from poverty to become this billionaire, he doesn't have the social connections, whereas Chloe does. And so she brings the social connections in Washington, they know the right families in Washington, D.C. She brings the connections, he brings the money. And so it's sort of a contract that they hope will work out, but unfortunately doesn't. Whereas Angel comes from an entirely different world and doesn't really understand that.
Right. And that speaks to something as well, these relationships that are really more almost like business relationships.
These marriages
together, because I got something that's good for you, you've got something that's good for me, and let's come together and see if we can make it work. And there may or may not always be love involved in that transaction.
And they're both attractive people. They're both active people. They may have assumed that the love would come. That they would learn to love each other. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
It didn't work out that way. So we have this great time that they are, go from Martha's Vineyard to Europe. So there's, it's just all of this kind of like being outside of the bubble of what everyday life is really
Yes.
going to look like once you get back
She's
home.
starting to get a sense of what everyday life could
Hmm.
be would be with him. I mean, and she's getting the luxury, the private jets and beautiful hotels and the shopping and all that. She's seeing that side of it too, but she's also realizing that there are going to be times when she's just lonely or having to deal or be there or exist without Everett. It's not going to be all the fun and games and um, social gatherings and get-togethers that they were on the island because he, like you said, he didn't get to be a billionaire hanging out and having fun. He works a lot.
A lot, a lot. So ultimately, they make their way to back home. And then that begins a whole nother part of their journey
Yeah.
because being at home and having to deal with the day-to-day things and being in this space that is a shared space, a large space but a big space, Everett's home, and all of that. So that just brings up a whole lot of other things, and that's when we really start to learn more about Chloe's story, as well as we get introduced to Ida, who is Everett's big sister. She's another character that's a character.
Yeah, she manages the estate, and I think in some ways you could say she traded Jillian for Ida. But
Mhm.
Ida is Jillian on steroids, I
Right,
guess you could say,
right.
really. And it's strange. You begin to realize that even though by this time, because they marry while they're still um, want to get back to the States, but before they go to Potomac, they
Mhm.
get married. So by the time Everett brings her to his estate in Potomac, he's married and she's his wife. So you would think she has more status. She has some, she would have some control of the estate over Ida. But Ida doesn't let that happen. Ida has been the manager of the estate and she doesn't care that this is Everett's wife. She's going to continue to rule the roost, and he lets her, which is a mystery throughout that portion of the novel. Is why does Everett
Right.
allow Ida to have so much control? And it's a frustration certainly for Angel, trying to figure out why he um, allows her to have so much control. It becomes clear toward the end, but
Yeah.
we're not going. No red herrings. We're not going to
No
give that away.
spoilers. If you don't normally watch, we're not gonna spoil it. You got to read it. But yeah, but just watching that dynamic of Kay, again, kind of a whirlwind. Yeah, maybe a few things that might cause questions. Because I mean, let's face it. Well, I'm just be honest. Me, Marcy, as a human being, when I see things happening real fast, I'm always like, because I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. I'll be like, you don't even know me. What do you mean you love me?
I know.
Marcy in my real life, but I understand that it does happen that way for some
Yeah, it
people.
does.
But reading it in the book again, there's kind of, yeah, there was a little bit of stuff happening, of course, with Mrs. Harrison, but she's not family, so it's kind of like, okay, I don't have to deal with her anymore once I married this man. But now that you're married to this man, you're being introduced to someone else who is family that you are going to have to deal with. So, that's something else that, can cause a lot of tension in relationships, going from that romantic honeymoon stage type of thing.
Mhm.
Now we're having to deal with bringing other personalities into our relationship.
Yeah, and she realizes early on that Ida is going to be difficult to manage, that Ida is not willing to let her status go, her role go at the plantation, even though, or the plantation, at the estate, e- even though Everett has married her. And she naturally assumed that when she went there, she would be the mistress of the household. But Ida's not giving it up for a good reason, which it puzzles and frustrates Angel until she finds out what's really going on
Mhm.
without getting into that.
Right.
And it's a difficult challenge for her because what it is it's sort of like the ghost of Chloe
Yes.
is overshadowing. the entire household. Even though she died apparently by suicide, she took her own life. Um, she's still very much present
Right.
in the household and kind of ruling, especially over Ida and Everett and their behaviors and the way they decorate the house and the way
Mm.
they keep the house with all the curtains drawn and the rooms dark and some rooms you can't go in. And all of this is because of Chloe and the shadow that she leaves over the house and the guests. And you do sense that there's something dark and sinister going on because there is.
There is, which we're not going to tell you.
No, we can't do that.
But but in that, it's just really, it speaks to grief though, because we have both Ida and Everett who are grieving for different reasons, and grief
Yes,
shows up in a lot of different ways.
yes,
And at the time of this, the telling of the story, we're what, maybe 2-3 years out from the time that Chloe is gone, and regardless of whatever ups and downs may have been occurring in relationships and things like that, there is still going to be a thing of grief, grieving over the person, or maybe grieving over things that you thought may have been different. And now, the life
yeah.
that you thought you were going to have is not the life that you currently have.
Both Everett and Ida are in states of grief over Chloe's death for various reasons, and they are finding it again for various reasons very hard to get past that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like she really is a shadow looming over the entire household, including the help. She was a very strong, vibrant presence, obviously, when she was alive, and in her death, perhaps even more so. Ida even keeps a room that Chloe lived in, that she stayed in, and she would not allow anything to be changed about the room. It's the only room that she allows sunlight into the house. And you do get this sense of this, this strange kind of relationship that existed between Chloe and Ida, and how she's unable to let Ida go, and that she adored Ida, she
Mm.
idolized Ida, and which also puzzles Angel. Um, but I think what puzzles Angel even more is why Everett puts up with all this.
Right.
Why he doesn't step up and snap Ida out of her, craziness over Chloe. Why he lets her get away with things like keeping the house dark and not
Mm-hmm.
allowing his wife to step in and take over certain duties in the household. He just pretty much says, let Ida have her way. And
Mm-hmm.
so that drives Angel nuts. And for a while, she puts up with it. I think what changes for Ida is when her two friends, Dawn and Patrice,
Yes.
from the old neighborhood from DC, who she knew before she met Everett, they come and visit her. And I think they kind of wake her up and make her realize that she's lost herself.
Right.
She was once this sous chef. She had a staff of dozens of cooks and chefs under her. She was a strong, vibrant woman, even when she was living in the household with um, what should I
Jillian.
call Jillian.
Mm.
Thank you. Even when she living in the household with Miss Jillian, although she had to be sneaky about it sometimes,
Right.
she did
Right.
what she wanted to do. And now she just sort of crumbled and lost her way,
Mm.
trying to fight Ida and find her place in this household. At the name of the estate is Riverwild. And so when Patrice and Dawn visit, they remind her, hey girl, you used to be have a lot of confidence. You were a boss. You had your stuff together. What happened? They don't recognize her.
Right.
And so after that, she begins to think, and she agrees that she's slipped up in a bad way, and she starts to get her moxie back. She starts to try to um, gain more control over this date. In fact, that she was a sous chef, she decided to take over the kitchen staff in the
Mm-hmm.
household and plan the menus and things like that.
Right. And it was good to see her like kind of reconnect to who she was. Because I mean, it is. easy oftentimes for people to get caught up in, this thing is new and exciting. And I mean, she went from being somebody who had to work,
Yeah.
now being somebody who really doesn't have to. And, how can she still hold on to pieces of herself in the midst of this relationship? And hey, let's face it, the man don't have to be a billionaire for that to happen, okay? It
No,
happens.
you lose your way sometimes. Yes.
Women can lose their way, or humans can lose their way in the context of relationships, and trying to build and learn and keep the relationship, but then still want to hold on to parts of themselves and maybe struggle with that. So it is good to have those friends that, or people that love you, that can come in and be like, hey girl, let's figure some
People
things
who
out,
knew the old
so you
self,
can,
who
so you
can
can
bring you back to them.
bring you back to yourself. But I'm gonna be honest with you, even though it was happening in one way, I still feel like Angel had parts of herself, because all this stuff is going on and she has all these questions about what's
You
going
froze for a second.
on. Oh, am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you say
Um,
that again?
I feel like even though there are parts of her that maybe she was kind of hanging back and not expressing herself, on the other side, she was like super sleuth.
Yeah.
So
She's
she had
always
questions, and she was asking questions, and she was, doing the things that she needed to do to get information that people weren't willing to give her. So I don't feel like she completely lost her.
completely lost herself. No,
Yeah,
no.
not
But
completely.
she had to regain her footing. But yes, she was.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yes, because really, if it wasn't for her diving deep and asking questions, and maybe being in places that people didn't want her to be, y'all got to read it to see what it is.
No.
But it that kind of helped her to get answers that may not have been given to her willingly.
Yeah, I think at the core, and given her history, she was a fairly strong, confident woman. But I think
Mhm.
with any woman in the right circumstances, you can sort of lose that a little bit. You can sort of question your abilities and your authority. And, it was a big challenge. She was being thrown into this whole new world of wealth and privilege that she had never dealt with before. So I don't think it's so unusual that she lost her bearings somewhat. But also because she had that core strength, inner strength, she was able to get it back with just a little shove, a little reminder, and she was able to get it back fairly quickly. And I think in the end, and I don't know how far you want to jump ahead, but and we can go and come back. I'm not going to give anything away,
Right?
but I think in the end, she ended up stronger than she started out in some ways,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with a lot of confidence. Maybe too strong. I don't know.
Right, right. Yes, she definitely did. And again, in speaking up and asking questions, and causing people to have to deal with things that maybe they might not have wanted to deal with had she not
Mhm.
brought it up. Because all of this is new to her. The man, the marriage, all this, resources and things that are available to her. But to come back and say, hey, I see some things happening that this isn't good. I want to know what's going on and why, and we need to get to the bottom of this. We need
She
to figure
got to the right. She asked the right questions. She got to the bottom of it, and she came up with a solution. Now, it might not be a solution that everyone would have come up with. I think there were some moral dilemmas in there that other people might have come up with a different solution, but it worked for her. The
mm,
solution. She I don't want to say she gave up some things, but she made compromises
make
for
compromises.
sure.
Hmm. But I mean, in all relationships, there comes a point where there may have to be some compromises along the way. You know,
Hmm.
so
It depends on the person and what you can live with.
what you can live with.
I
Yes,
think
because
she kind of surprised herself with what she realized she could live with and what she wanted to get
right,
out of that relationship and in life. What
right,
was
right,
important to her.
right. Because I will admit,
She changed for sure. I think
yes,
she
she
changed
changed
in
for
the end.
sure. And I will say, and again, y'all got to read it because we're not going to tell you. But I was really surprised at how the story kind of wraps up. There
I
were
think
some things, yeah.
I was surprised because that was the part, I pretty much when I write, I outline, not the entire novel, but maybe 10 chapters at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that went along pretty well. You make changes and you come back, but that's normal. I think this was the first time I got to the end, and the end just totally stumped me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went back and watched Rebecca. I watched an earlier Rebecca film, and now I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want a different ending. And I had to turn that over. I talked to people. What should I do? And then I suddenly realized, you know what you're doing? You're overcomplicating things.
Mm,
Ending doesn't have to be that complicated because in one of the films, I think the Hitchcock film, the ending is very convoluted with all these twists and turns. And I said, I'm just going to have a simple
right.
ending. And that's what I did. I was happy, I had mixed feelings about the ending. I was happy with it and the way it was resolved. I didn't, she didn't make the choice that I hope I would have
Okay.
made. I think she made the choice I would have made. Some women would have made that choice. I don't think I would have.
Okay.
There's definitely a moral dilemma there that she has to grapple with. Who knows? Billionaire. I
Yeah,
don't
no.
know.
Well, I mean, you brought up an interesting point in saying that the choice that she made would not necessarily be the choice that you would have made in a
No,
situation like that. So that just goes to the power of being a storyteller and a writer to like tell a story and maybe not wrap it up in the in the tidy bow that you would do it if it was you, but to have
yeah,
somebody do something totally different from what you would do.
those are my favorite endings because the whole point to me, especially a more an author who's been writing as long as I have, is to learn to step out of the box and to do something different and to do something unexpected. I think 20 years ago, I would not have been able to write that ending. I would have written the ending that most people could have lived with peacefully. The
Mm-hmm.
ending that I think would have been my ending. And to
Mm-hmm.
be able to step out of that box and write an ending totally different from what I might have done or what maybe most people would expect to happen, it was a bit of a challenge. But also, I'm thrilled that I did it that way
Yeah.
because for me it feels like growth as an author to be able to do that and to be able to justify it. And yeah, I guess the challenge was to make it seem acceptable, to make it
Mm-hmm.
seem to really work because it is a difficult choice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she definitely is faced with a difficult choice, and it's the choices she made,
Yeah, and she's
and
happy with it. So,
she's happy with it.
do
And
you
I
think
mean,
you would have made? Can I ask you? What choice would you have made her choice or a
would
different
I
choice?
have made her choice? Probably not.
And is it one of those things that we say, no, 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 I wouldn't have done that? But yeah, I mean, billionaire, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, probably not. Because I mean, either way it went, and like I said, we're not telling you the story, but either way it went, she could have come out with something. Either way it went because of whatever. But it's
Yeah.
are we going to choose what could be beneficial financially? Or are we going to choose what's going to be beneficial for our heart?
But
So
morally, the
more
right
right
thing to do.
morally, yeah, which way are you going to go? So I mean that is something, and to have a complex character or a
And also
complex
to sacrifice love. She loved him. Is she going to sacrifice love
right.
um, to do the morally? I don't want to get into it too much, but yeah. So
As
she
we'll start
she
telling
has all these different things, and it takes her a couple of days. She's got all these different things that she has to weigh and consider, that
mm,
I had to weigh and consider. And once I knew how I wanted to end, I had to figure out how she would handle it to make it seem real or believable.
mm.
Especially
Now,
since it was going against what I think I would have done. So I had to
right.
really step outside of my zone, so to speak.
Okay. So in coming to that decision, do you was how can I put it? Some people writers say that they feel like their characters are speaking to them and telling them that which way to go. So is that what
Oh,
Chloe
they
the
do that all the
is that
time.
is that what Angel was doing? Not Chloe, but Angel.
Yeah. And I could have this ending because of the way Angel evolved throughout the novel. And without even realizing it, and maybe my subconscious was doing this, when you get to this point, you can look back and see places where Angel was defiant and went
Mm-hmm.
against the grain. And
Mm-hmm.
because of the way she developed and her personality, I was able to create that ending without too much difficulty. She wasn't this angel
Right. She
all the
was
way
not an
through.
angel. Yeah. That's an oxymoron for her.
Yeah, she was strong and tough when she needed to be. So, yeah, because of the personality she had developed to that point, allowed me to create that ending, I think.
Hmm. But the reality of it is, I mean, let's face it, in our own lives and the people around us, sometimes people don't make, that morally whatever
No,
sound
they
choice
don't.
others think that they can make, but I mean should make. But if that person has found their happiness, their joy, their peace, whatever, in that choice that they've made, ultimately they're the ones that have to live with the choice. So yeah, other people might have something to say about it or think about it, but it's their choice.
Yeah, it's difficult for you to say if you haven't lived in my shoes. So
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I love that. Actually, we are almost at time, but I do want to ask you a couple of more questions. Like,
okay,
yes, I told you
okay.
we go fast. Yep, it's 8:53.
Yeah, this time has
I
flown
told
by.
you.
I mean, I enjoy talking to you. We're gonna.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I just want to talk a bit about you as a writer, because as you said, many of the earlier books that we are familiar with were more in the women's fiction vein, and then of course you have a couple of really beautiful nonfiction books out there in the world as well. One of which was the last time I saw you, which is Stepping Out, which is a beautiful picture book that talks about Black people in fashion and style and things like that, as well as Jewels, which is about women over 50 and, all of those sorts of things. So, from a perspective of being a writer, what is it that draws you to want to tell different types of stories and not necessarily being, oh, well, I have to be this type of writer or I have to tell this type of story?
I think that comes from my personality in general. I'm always looking for the next challenge. I'm always looking for something new to reach for. I don't want to say I become bored if I stick with one thing. I just like to branch out. I like to try different things. And that's what keeps me motivated as a writer. I know a lot of writers who get bored with writing. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's because they stick with the same type of writing all the time. They don't take breaks. They don't come out and try something different. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me willing to write because, I love learning about a new genre. I love learning about a new type of book. Um, and then taking a chance and seeing if I can do it. I'll admit I've tried some some books that didn't work so well that were outside of what I normally do. But that for me is the fun part of writing, the challenge of trying something new, whether I succeed or whether I don't succeed. Yeah, it's almost if I have to do it that way.
I love that because I mean it definitely stretches that muscle, that writing
Yes,
muscle. You're
that's what I
trying.
need to do. I need to stretch that muscle. Yes.
Yes, so it's like you go to the gym. If you always just do the same thing, after a while, your body's like, okay, whatever. This is doing nothing. So
Yeah.
sometimes you got to go and try something different, and have a different result. So I love that. You keep that open mindedness and that you just want to tell good stories and find different ways in which to tell good stories.
Yeah, and the nonfiction also gives me a break. It gives me a chance to do something else. That's what the 10-year break was because of that. But if I want to keep writing, and generally I do want to keep writing, um, trying nonfiction in between all the fiction is a way to let me stretch my muscles, as you say, or to do something different. And then once I do that, I'm refreshed. I'm ready to come back to the fiction. And I also very much enjoy the nonfiction books I've worked on. In both cases, I worked with a wonderful photographer,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Cunningham, and then What was the second guy I
I
worked
don't
with?
have it in front of me either.
His name is Milton. Milton.
Yes, Milton.
Beautiful, both wonderful photographers, and so that was an experience itself. I met, especially in the first book, 50 Women Over 50. I met a lot of very successful, talented women. I had one of Ruby Dee,
It's on
Eleanor,
the cover.
Eleanor Holmes. Yes. And in the second book, I met also some celebrities, although not all of the people in that book were celebrities. I did meet some fascinating women. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that because that is another theme, in your books, regardless of what genre, you are really, tapping into the stories of Black people in general, but specifically really focusing on Black women and just our different trials and triumphs and, all of those
yes,
things. So you always keep that. That's the center, the core of your work, regardless of what type
exactly.
of
I'm
work.
glad you. I'm happy to know that you realize that you see that. You know,
I
yeah.
do. So we appreciate you for that. So it's been such a pleasure to have you here again, Miss Connie Briscoe. It's so exciting to have you and to have had a
Oh, I
chance
was
to
happy to be
talk to
here.
Chloe. For everybody, if you haven't read it yet, it is a domestic suspense. And of course, we did not tell you all everything because that wasn't the point.
We probably told too much, but no, we didn't tell you
No,
everything.
we didn't. We
You
didn't.
don't
We
think
left a
so?
lot. We left a lot out. We left
Yeah,
a lot out. Which is the whole plan because we really want to introduce and let people know what themes are and things like that, just to get them excited about reading the work. So of course this book has been out for a short amount of time. I'm sure you probably got something else that you're working on. So
I'm thinking at this point. The book just came out in March. I'm thinking
mhm,
about what will come next.
thinking about what's next. So
Actually, I'm doing a lot of. Have you heard of Substack?
I have heard of Substack. Yes.
I'm doing a lot of writing on that.
Okay.
Trying to create something for aspiring and emerging authors. I have been very blessed in this field. I have, since 1995, I've published maybe, I think, a dozen books,
Yes.
and I've been able to support myself full time as a writer.
I love
And
that.
so I'm at this stage where I have been at this stage for a while where, I want to give something back. I'm always meeting people whose dream is to become a writer. It's not easy, but it's possible. So, what I'm doing with my blog on Substack called Behind the Chapters is offering advice and guidance to young writers who want to publish novels or some type of story. And this is my way of just trying to give back.
I love that. And I did see the link to that on your website. So if you
Yes,
go
it's
to
on my
her,
website, ConnieBriscoe.com,
right, if you go
and
there,
it has a link to the blog
yes.
for,
And
for those
also,
of you who want to write.
yes.
Actually, when I do tour and I meet women on my tours, probably the question I always get is, how do I become a writer? So that's
Mm,
one reason why I wanted to start the blog. I get that question a lot. I think most people have a book inside of us. We just
yes.
don't know how to get it out, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. The challenge is getting it out, finding the time, knowing the skill, um, trusting your instincts, having the confidence. We talk about all those things on the blog.
I love that. I love that. And I can agree because over here, y'all can't see it, but I have like a couple of things written out of a book that I want to write. And like you said, it's just like figuring it all out and, how I'm
What
going
are
to
you
write it,
trying
when
to
I'm
write?
going to write it.
Fiction or
Well, I
nonfiction?
have a couple in my mind, but the one that's I have over here that's written is actually the idea is a fiction idea. So,
Okay,
so, and I have a lot. I have like a whole sheet of things written out. So it's just a matter of me taking the time to get started and
it's
doing it one
hard. It's hard,
time.
especially when you have to work to support yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, because I do have a day job. Everybody, I have a day job, and then I do
Well,
this.
I wrote my first novel. I had a day job. Do you know what I did?
What did you do?
I had a day job. I didn't have a family at that time, a husband and
Okay.
children. That makes it harder. I would get up. I had to be to work, I don't know, maybe at 9. I would get up at 4 or 5 every morning and write. I wanted the the book that I was working on, which became Sisters and Lovers, one of my best books. I wanted that to get my best time. I wanted that to get me at my freshest, at my most alert. And the job could have whatever was left.
Yeah. In the day,
But
like
you have if you are determined to do it, you will find the time.
Yes,
if it's morning, if it's at night, or whatever.
I just have to learn how to go to bed because to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, you have to go to bed. I was going to bed 9 or 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
At that time,
Absolutely.
I didn't have insomnia. I have insomnia now. I couldn't do it. But
Yeah.
that time, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that makes sense. And you know who else did that? Toni Morrison. So hey,
I'm sure. I'm
she
not
got up
surprised.
early in the morning and did her writing.
It's quiet then, especially if you live in a household with other people. Everyone else is asleep.
Mm-hmm.
The roads are quiet. It's quiet outdoors. I lived in DC at that time, so the street I was on could get pretty noisy once the traffic got going. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, everything is quiet. You get up, it's dark, you get your coffee. That in itself stimulates you, motivates you.
I love that. I love that. But in addition to your blogging, you also restarted your book club, Chapters in Chocolate.
Yeah, I had plans to try to restart it. I think there's a place for it. I think it's needed. The problem is I'm not sure Facebook is the best place to do it
Mm,
because Facebook, I don't know, it's not what it used to be.
that's
It
true.
tends to throttle your publications, it's the algorithm, and I put stuff up, and maybe I've got like maybe over 1,000 people on that site, in that book group, and 20 people may see a post.
Okay.
It's not very encouraging. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the best space to do that kind of thing.
Well,
I
anybody,
opened it. Go on.
no, say anybody in here, if you know of an alternative, and I'll think of some and share them with you as well, because that is a thing though. Make if you're in that particular space, making sure that people can really find you and be able to connect.
Hmm.
Mm.
I
But I
think
like
all
that.
social media has gotten like that. It's evolved. It's changed so much.
It has, it has. But I do like that name, Chapters in Chocolate. I love that.
So I want to keep it just to keep the name, but I'm
Yes,
going to try to when I get a little bit more time. I may try to figure out how I can use it.
sounds good.
Facebook may not be the best place for it.
Yeah, well, I'll be on the lookout, and I'll ask some of my
Okay.
other friends. And if we come up with something, I got you. I know how to find you. I will email you.
Okay. Anytime, please do.
What I
All right.
So thank you again so much, Connie, for being here with us again. And of course, this is a home to you from this point forward. So whatever you got going on, fiction, nonfiction, you are always welcome to join us over
Thank you.
here because we love talking to you and just, your beautiful work as well as just your wisdom and all of that. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
So
you for having me. I
absolutely.
appreciate it. I enjoyed talking to you too.
Oh, I can't. I thought I was done, but I'm really not. This cover. This cover is beautiful, and I mean these flowers. We see them in the book at a certain point.
Lilac
Tell us a little
flowers.
bit
Yeah.
about this cover. It's so beautiful.
I don't know. I'm not sure who the designer was.
Yeah,
He
I'm trying
went
to see if it's.
a couple. He came up with pretty much this on the first draft,
Mhm.
and we went back and had a few minor changes made. But it's brilliant. I wish I didn't. I'm trying to see if the name
Yeah,
of the
I'm trying to
artist.
see if it's in here as well. If it's here, but it's such a beautiful
Oh,
cover.
his name is probably on the inside flap, the back flap.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous cover. I love that purple and the flowers and all that. When you read the story, you'll see where they come up. So it is relevant to the actual story. So I
Yeah,
just want to show that again
very
because it's
much.
such a beautiful cover. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you
Thank
don't
you.
mind, hold on for me for just a second. I want to say, good night to you properly, but I do want to also share with the people who's coming next. So don't hang up yet. I'll see you in just a second, okay, Connie? And
Okay.
thanks again. All right, thank you. All right, everybody. I love Miss Connie Briscoe. I have been reading her book since when she first got started. So I definitely always consider it an honor to be able to talk to her and share her works with all of you and for you to get to know a little bit more about her. So just by means of letting you know, announcement wise, on Wednesday I will be actually, it's a pre-recorded session because this young lady lives in London. She's across the pond, so we had to do it early because they are 5 hours ahead, and I didn't want her talking to me in the middle of the night. So on Wednesday, look for my conversation with Lola J about her latest historical fiction novel, The Manual for Good Wives. So be on the lookout for that. It's historical fiction with also a dual timeline, so you get some modern day in here as well. But Lola J is the author of The Attic Child, so if you may be familiar with her from that work, I talked to her for that book as well when it came out a few years ago. But this will go up on Wednesday, so please look for this conversation. And a week from today, I will have Megan Giddings here to talk about her latest book, Me at the Crossroads. So we got some good things coming up. That's just over the next, week or so. And then, there'll be some other things coming all summer long. Got some hot stuff coming for you. It's hot. It's going to be hot over here, not just because of the heat that's outside. So thank you again for being here as always. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon for some of our other great Black women writers who are coming up for the summer. So talk soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.